Chapter 16. The rules of the competition were simple: riding a horse around the 500m track twice, whoever reached the finish line first won. Serafina put on her hat, put on her knee and elbow pads, and led her horse out. Hannah was also prepared. The others gathered in groups of 3 or 5, either sitting on the corridor around the track or lazily leaning against the railing as spectators. For men, watching beautiful women compete with each other was as exciting as for women, watching men compete with each other. Hannah thought she had the upper hand in this horse riding. She looked at Serafina with a sarcastic smile. With a strong and proud demeanor, she turned around and mounted her horse. Serafina just silently mounted the horse. When she was 20, she really didn't know how to ride a horse, and had even fallen off before, but that was 9 years ago, a thing from her previous life. Emma found a trainer at the training ground and borrowed a whistle. Waiting for the 2 people and 2 horses to get ready. 1, 2, 3. The whistle sounded. The 2 people almost simultaneously whipped the horse, and the horse immediately accelerated, galloping across the grass. In the first half lap, there was no clear winner. Hannah was only 1 horse head ahead. This was something she had never expected. The horses both of them chose were good horses, so their safety, tameness, and physical strength were similar. Hannah had been so bold before because she had always loved thrills, and riding a horse always required her to gallop fast. She had never met a girl who galloped faster than her. But today, she had. What was even more infuriating was that whenever she sped up, Serafina would also speed up and follow closely, not lagging behind at all. After running another half lap, Hannah was forced to surpass her normal top speed. Although both of them looked like they were galloping on horseback, it was clear that Hannah was always on guard against Serafina. Serafina, on the other hand, was strangely free and easy. No matter how she urged the reins or raised the whip, she was very natural and leisurely. Everyone standing around the yard was surprised. Ethan was surprised. "William, your sister has never run so fast before, has she?" William did not show any expression, nor did he reply. Harrison and the others just watched silently, without commenting. On the contrary, Andrew smiled. With such a fast opponent, she has no choice but to go beyond her limits. Emma turned to Vivian and asked, "Doesn't Serafina know how to ride a horse?" Vivian was even more confused. "Yes, last month Lily and I taught her to ride a horse, and she fell off." From then on, whenever she saw a horse, she was terrified. "Lily, is that right?" Lily only curled her lips slightly and didn't answer. Right now, she was busy praying that Hannah definitely wouldn't let Serafina win. Not to mention the bet, her performance alone was enough to leave a deep impression on people. Just thinking about Serafina showing off in front of so many men, Lily's heart felt like it was being torn apart by thousands of claws. Emma sighed. "This girl is playing a game of chance." Harrison's pupils contracted slightly, and his eyes deepened. Hannah was being chased closely, but there was nothing she could do. She knew clearly that she had reached her limit, and if she went any faster, she might fall. With only half a lap left, she couldn't go any faster, but Serafina still seemed to want to speed up, as if the world was rapidly retreating behind her. The howling wind and the swaying saddle were nothing to her. The moment Serafina passed her, Hannah was furious, and swung her whip, fiercely lashing at Serafina who was running beside her. Her plan was to either knock her off her horse, or if she fought back, then she would take this opportunity to roll down, and blame Serafina. The force of the whip made the air crackle. As soon as the whip landed, Serafina didn't expect it at all, screaming in pain. "Ah!" The entire audience on the railing gasped in fear. This whip hitting someone, just hearing the sound was enough to make their backs go cold. Serafina's arm felt like it had been chopped off by someone. The burning pain like fire exploded and ran through her arm, becoming more and more obvious. But her hand holding the reins did not loosen. The horse was not affected at all, continuing to accelerate. She clenched her teeth, her eyes darkened. She had wanted to hit this brat for a long time. Without thinking, she decided not to hit Hannah and the horse she was riding back. Beware of a scoundrel like her using dirty tricks. If she pretends to roll down, Serafina will turn out to be the villain. Although she really wanted to whip her, whip her to death. She didn't want today's fair and just victory to be tainted even more. The most profound way to hit someone is to hit their dignity. The horsewhip pretended to swing a few times in front of Hannah's horse's head. The well-trained horse saw an obstacle, and immediately slowed down reflexively. Before Hannah could react, she watched as Serafina kicked up dust and flew away, crossing the finish line. Hannah stood in the middle of the racetrack, almost unable to believe it. Serafina took one of her whips without fighting back, giving her no chance to pretend to be the victim. Serafina even stopped her horse. This time, she had lost from start to finish. Moreover, she had lost all face. Serafina's horse gradually slowed down, stopping in front of everyone. She took off her helmet, slid down from the horse's back, took off her elbow protectors while smiling brightly and greeting everyone who was still stunned. She looked at Harrison, smugly raising her head. "I won. Can you sell those 5 sets of production lines to us now?" She still used a completely excited tone, as if this was something she should have. And this was exactly what she should have. Harrison's eyes were still silent as if nothing, fixed on her fresh face under the bright sunlight. The golden sun appeared at the bottom of her eyes. At first glance it looked warm, but it contained an undisguised arrogance and pride. But that arrogance did not make others hate it. On the contrary, it was very genuine, innocent, without the slightest pretense. He nodded. "That is what you should have." She smiled, no different from a child. "Thank you." After speaking, as if she had finally completed her mission, she gently took off all the protective gear on her body. He lowered his eyes and glanced at her arm. On her soft, fair skin, a blood clot about 2 fingers wide suddenly appeared, crossing from top to bottom. The area around the blood clot was also swollen. Her slender arm looked as if it was completely swollen, very scary. Emma looked at it in horror. Just as she was about to speak, Harrison indifferently opened his mouth. "I'll take you to the hospital." She waved her hand indifferently. "No need, I've already driven. Besides, aren't you guys planning to go out to eat later?" He was silent, and didn't have any strange feelings about being rejected. He simply asked, "Aren't you going to eat together?" Her movements paused. "Are we that close?" "If we are that close, why have you ignored me so many times before, not wanting to help me?" Although, she secretly snorted, she didn't need a man to save her. Hannah behind her was so angry that her eyes turned red. Hospital? Going out to eat? Why was Harrison so nice to a strange woman? How long was she going to stand here and talk, deliberately showing off the wound on her hand to make people feel sorry for her? Lily's expression was also very unsightly. "I'm not going." Serafina smiled freely, but it was obvious that her smile had become less bright. The momentary brilliance just now was because of the joy of winning. Now that she had calmed down, she naturally had to change to a moderately cautious expression. She saw Hannah approaching, smiling with the attitude of a winner. "What I want is already in my hands, staying longer is useless." "Sorry, I have disturbed everyone's fun." "Everyone, continue on." She said so sorry, but casually curled her lips without any shame, clearly looking down on everyone here. She smiled charmingly and turned around to leave, leaving behind a beautiful and free-spirited back. It wasn't until she reached the parking lot that she painfully sat down, holding her arm almost screaming, the pain making her tears flow. Hannah, this whip today, later she would definitely pay her back with interest. The driver saw her and the wound on her hand from the rearview mirror and was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly got out of the car. "What happened to your hand?" "Get in the car, we're going to the hospital." "No need." She suppressed the pain and got into the car. "Go to the South Mountain base to pick up Theodore first." It was almost the weekend, and if she left him there, he would probably go crazy. She hadn't seen him for 5 days, and she wondered if he had done anything at school. The South Mountain base of the military school was actually a place to discipline stubborn teenagers, and was strictly managed by military principles, prohibiting all electronic communication devices. The base was located on a mountain, and the students couldn't escape. Doing this, she also felt very sorry, very reluctant. But there was no other way. She had to show off her power to him. She had to let him know, even if she couldn't tie him up with her own hands, she had a lot of ways to tie him up. When she saw him, he was holding a broom and sweeping fallen leaves in front of the dormitory. Most of the students were locked up here for half a year or 10 months by their families because they were too mischievous, and no one would come to pick them up on the weekends, so he wasn't too lonely. He also knew how to entertain himself, waving the broom around like a martial arts hero, busily doing all the moves he thought were cool, and even playing a game like Autumn Wind Sweeps Away Fallen Leaves, beating the green leaves on the trees until they flew everywhere. She couldn't help but laugh, calling him with a voice as warm as a patch of late spring afternoon sunlight, "Theodore." He turned his head and saw her, stunned for half a second, then immediately ran over in surprise and joy, a red glow spreading across his face and hair. The first 2 days he came here, he hated to death, but he didn't know where to vent it. His phone was confiscated. The scene that appeared in his mind the most every day was waiting for him to leave here and definitely strangle Serafina to death. Even in his dreams at night he dreamed of strangling her and shaking her. But after 3 or 4 days, he cherished hope. It would be good if someone came to visit him, even if it was Serafina, the person he hated the most. Outside the dormitory, there was an iron fence surrounding it. There were strict rules about where students could appear at any time, so he could only stand and talk to her through the fence. The feeling of joy just now passed very quickly. Now he understood, he hated her. He glared at her, the fire burning in his eyes for at least 10 seconds. His 2 hands also fiercely grabbed the fence, as if it was her neck. She saw him angry but did not get upset. Instead she laughed and said, "You are like a child who was sent to kindergarten for the first time by his mother, leaning against the door every day, sadly waiting." Suddenly, a little Theodore jumped into her mind, his tiny hands holding on to the kindergarten door, tears welling up in the spring breeze. While crying, he thought, "Why hasn't Mom picked me up yet? So cute."